Alright, called Pun Piso here. Let's go back in time. Let's go back a few thousand years. A primitive man, didn't understand nature. They didn't understand themselves. But the brain is obsessed with understanding. So it was necessary to invent God and all kind of supernatural entities to explain the world. That's when religion came into existence. Forces that actually made primitive men invent and create God and the afterlife was the horror of death due to cognition. You see, animals, they are not scared of death. They die and the pest comes around, they don't care, and they live with the planet, but we don't. We are crazy apes. And just the idea that we're going to die and we're getting old and we suffer disease, we have to explain it somehow. And we explain it by inventing God, demons, and spirits, and all that. Everything that we saw in nature, we personified. Even emotions were personified. Everything was personified in those days. There are two cognitive forces, all in our genes. One is a cognitive force in ancient times that is kind of feeble, that is kind of weak, and it just embraces, doesn't want to study anything, it just embraces the delusions and the religious beliefs of the culture. The other one is the inquirer, the inquisitive brain. That even though it's not taught anything, but instinct said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense, I want to study this, I want to study that, and observation. That would eventually, thousands of years, become science, awareness, with facts to prove them and to back them up. And it's constantly evolving. More things have been discovered. But feeble minds that love fairy tales and delusions, they are more powerful and they're always in control of everything. And the people that have the minds that inquire and all that, they're in the minority in every culture. And they have to shut up, otherwise they get killed.
To the ancient men, 5,000 years ago, clouds were mysterious, were an enigma. To them it was the ancient world, was the spirit of the ancestors floating in the ether, just like the sun and the stars. Today we know they're clouds. The birds were the spirits of the soul.
This is the reason ancient men study astronomy and study the movement of the stars. It was not necessarily because of the crops and the fields and planting. It was very important for the religious beliefs that they had and the ancestors
and they also give it static electricity, which was part of the soul.
Hesiod, around 700 BC. His book, called Theogony, was the ancient Greek story of creation.
Greeks use mythology to try and figure out why the world operates the way that it does.
Everybody uses mythology because
they
of
didn't
that.
have scientific explanations yet for how the world came into existence, or why lightning strikes here but not there, or why it strikes here but not there, or why it strikes.
One out of thousands of many mythologies throughout the world, histories of creation. But here in the Theogony, which is everything in the Bible and the Talmud and all that is contained in the Theogony with different names. You have the main god, which is Zeus, you know, the one with the thunderbolts came from the sky, from the spirit world. The sky came also water, rain, besides lightning and static electricity. And guess what too? Music, thunder. That's the reason they use drums with these low things that are mysterious. That's where the Ark of the Covenant came from.
Imagine an insect. To them, they were also sacred, like the water that these poor guys fell into. The water was also a river of life, equated with milk, breast milk, and the semen.
Imagine to the ancient men what Nature represented what clouds were, the air, the birds. They were the spirits, the spirit world. They also produce electricity, which were the light bolts of Zeus and Apollo. The sun god reflecting against the clouds. To them it was divine. White clouds, perhaps self-righteous spirits. Dark clouds, thus condemn. To the ancients, the clouds were the manifestations of the spirit world, just like the air. The clouds, the gas, were part of the spirit world where the stars and the moons were suspended. In the moment we die, the air in our lungs, the spirit, will join the spirit world and we cease to exist and go into a different life, according to the ancients. Imagine the ancient men look at the spirit world, at the clouds, and seeing the images of their loved ones. This, of course, we know as pareidolia. We're trying to see figures in the clouds, and I'm pretty sure you can see here something. You make something out of this.
That's the reason you see the Virgin Mary everywhere, in sandwiches, and the same thing with Jesus, the Christus, even in trees. And the Romans in ancient times, as usual, they have all the cover, all the silk, anything that floated in the air was sacred to them, and they use it as a representation of the spirit world. The frescoes at the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii clearly illustrates this. You notice all these ribbons, all this, a lot of epigraphy that symbolizes the spirit world in these sacred rituals, even with angels type of figures.
Image of the spirit world. The clouds, the spirits suspended, as well as the sun god, the moon goddess, and the stars.
Ancient men always tried to copy the gods, even with drums imitating thunder, and it creates fear on the enemies. Also, they use entheogens, drugs, as sacraments to see God. But here's an important one. The Ark of the Covenant was nothing but a drum. 1,000 years ago, all those bass and low frequency sounds were terrifying for people, the equivalent to thunder weapon. In the Roman times, it was a little bit different, but they still use these sounds and trumpets and high sounds to terrify the enemy. But this is the reason you cannot find the Ark of the Covenant anywhere. Zero. Because it was simply a drum. And the Romans simply ignore a drum in a temple. But to them, it was sacred to the Jews. And eventually they took it to Africa.
The radiocarbon dating gives a date of around 600 years, and this is entirely consistent with the Lemba oral tradition. According to their traditions, there was an earlier Ngoma that somehow was destroyed, we don't know how, and then a new Ngoma was fashioned by the priests.
I know that the Ngoma Lungundu was a drum,
yeah.
But are you not working your argument backwards here to say that the biblical ark was also a drum?
No, I think I have to answer the question in a different way. So there's plenty of evidence in the Old Testament that the ark had a variety of quite different functions. It was important in part because it had those different functions. It was a weapon of war in some sense. It does appear to have played a role in musical and martial and
Sounds like God, especially low frequencies, and our bodies, oh boy. And another God important was...
Which is water from the sky, with the static electricity also, and thunder and noises, music of the gods. Water from the sky, along with music of the gods, the thunder, were considered sacred and mysterious.
Well, today in the 21st century, thanks to science, we know that we create everything with the brain, and those are delusions that belong in the past. If you accept all these delusions of reality today, something's wrong with your brain. Better get it examined. There is no God. Pace Dio.